another session. So why don't we go ahead and get started? So good afternoon, everyone. I am Philip Samueli. I'm with the Armed Services YMCA here in San Diego. And I would like to welcome you all to this virtual Military Spouse Symposium. Today in this session, we have Joseph J. Montanaro. JJ is a certified financial planner, professional CFP, and director on the USAA military advocacy team. He earned his bachelor's degree from the United States Military Academy, West Point, New York. He also holds a master's of science in personal financial planning from Kansas State University. JJ's advice has appeared in numerous outlets, and he writes personal finance columns for Military Spouse Magazine, American Legion Magazine, and is a regular contributor to military.com's personal finance section. During this session, JJ will be presenting Reset Financial Wellness as we emerge from the other side, on the other side. So our session will be ending at 2:05. So I'll give us a little warning when we have about 5 minutes to go for some Q&A. And take it away, JJ. Thank you for being here.
Hey, thanks for having me, Philip. Great to be with you, and happy Military Spouse Appreciation Day. We were doing our own little internal celebration here at USAA. We've got a total, when you look at military affiliated employees, roughly around 20%, and many of them are military spouses. So it was a great celebration today. And one of the spouses said that the idea that they didn't sign up for this, but they're in it. And so on behalf of all of us here at USA, I want to say thank you to you for the commitment you have to your family and to the community. So it's great for us to be able to be here and in a small way, hopefully share something that can make a difference. And I've got with me David Deary, who's the local San Diego representative. He's going to watch the chat because multitasking is not something I do well. So David's going to watch the chat. If you've got questions, feel free to throw them in there. I know we'll do a little bit of Q&A at the end, but if you've got questions on specific topics as we go through this, ask David. He'll answer the questions, or if he feels like it makes sense, he'll interrupt me. I know he likes to do that, right, David? So anyway, it's great to be with you. Really, the concept here was, we at USA, we talk about financial readiness all the time, and we've got what we call this core advice. And so on the left-hand side of this slide, you see our core advice principles. And but the reality is if you look at the impact of the pandemic, it's been different on different people. So David and I were actually doing another event over at Lincoln Military Housing earlier this week. And it was pretty surprising, at least to me, when we did a poll and asked, hey, how much has the pandemic impacted you in a negative way from a financial perspective? And really, there was a 4%, so a very small slice that said, yeah, it's been pretty devastating, but there was almost 20% that said it had been beneficial, and the rest had very little impact. So I'd be interested if you in the chat, if you don't mind, this is not a good poll, but it's at least gives us some idea. How has it impacted you? A little, lot, not at all? Been a positive? Feel free to share that. But the point here of this slide is, while we have these tenets and we typically run through them in order, and in this particular case, as you look at the different elements based on what's happened, there may be different areas where you need a little bit more attention, other areas that you can grow from, and some areas that you're probably right on track. And so that's kind of the approach we'll take here today, is just taking a look at what might have happened, and what you might look at right now, or what you might do right now. And if there are things that, again, we can take from this all and make ourselves better and learn from them. So that's our core advice. If I look at the first one, it's all about insurance and protection. And to me, the first thing that pops to mind here in terms of potentially having to reset would be things that happen relative to the little details of protection. So estate planning, the common example I always use is, hey, this is a great time, as good a time as any, to take a look at your beneficiary designations, because I've over the years worked with numerous members who have, when we do the data gathering in a financial planning arrangement, they bring me all their stuff together, and I'm looking at the beneficiary designations and seeing names that don't make any sense to me in the context of what I know about the member. I'm like, well, who's this beneficiary? Well, it's my ex-spouse, or something like that. So you've got your life insurance going to your ex-spouse. Is that part of your plan? And like, no, it's not part of my plan. So this is a great time to look at the details, and also to really look at your own situation. We always say here at USAA, regardless of whatever type of insurance you're talking about, whether it's auto insurance, life insurance, so on and so forth, any type of life event is a great time to relook and make sure you've got, one, the right coverage, and two, the right amounts of coverage. And so if nothing else, and certainly it has been, this last 15 months, 16 months has been a life event. So good time to revisit your insurance. Part of that is making sure that you understand what you have. And the example or the story I always tell about that is just the fact that I came to USA probably 8 or 9 years into my financial planning career. I've been working with clients for that time period, focused mainly on investments and IRAs and things like that. But when I got to USA, it was really the first time I kind of took down took a close look at the insurance that we had relative to like auto insurance and property insurance. And I had at the time, which I thought was full coverage. Sometimes you hear people say full coverage and you think, well, that's good, right? But I had full coverage, lived in Missouri. And so what that meant is my car was protected by comprehensive and collision coverage, but I had liability coverage of bodily injury was like 25,000 and 50,000 per accident, in my property damage coverage. And this was the thing that was a little bit of a shock to me. So hopefully not a shock to you. And this could be your call to action for today, is just to go back and look and see where you stand. But my property damage coverage, so that's the coverage that you have in case you break something, break somebody else's car, a fence, a light pole, was 15,000, which was mandated by the state of Missouri. And so there I was driving around thinking, hey, I'm all good, it's good. But the reality is that had I done more than $15,000 damage, I would have been responsible for everything above that 15,000. So just taking the time as you reset things to look at these various coverages, look at the details, figure out what you have, and make sure it matches what you need. All right, next slide. So this is the golden rule, personal finance. And when we talk about it at my house, this is the golden line. All my kids, my baby is going to graduate from nursing school here in a couple of weeks. But all my kids, if you ask them what is financial planning, how could you distill it down to one phrase? It would be spend less than you earn and save some to boot. And so again, when you look at it in the context of the pandemic, a lot of people have seen changes to their spending plan. And at our house, for example, dining out, we spent dramatically less money over the last year, just starting to get back into it now than we typically did. So that's a positive. On the other hand, if I asked you, hey, where are some of the areas where you've spent more or spent less? There are probably some opportunities there. One, to capture that type of savings and move forward with it. And the eating out at my house would be a great example. But maybe there's some things I need to tone down. Amazon is really not my best friend. And do I really need to have 26 purchases every week at Amazon? Maybe not. But again, the idea, hey, look at what's happened in your own lives financially, look for opportunities to build from and opportunities maybe to kind of course correct. And I put the 4-step budgeting process there. But the idea, the first step is the one really where I'd love to see you focus. And that's just the idea of understanding where your money goes, tracking spending. I don't know how many times I've worked with members or clients and said, okay, how much money do you have at the end of each month? And because I'm thinking, okay, this is money that we can use to pay down debt, to build savings or to invest for the future. And they'll say, oh, it's $400. And I'm like, okay, that gives us something to work with. And part of my homework will be, between now and the next time we meet, go back and track your spending, and then let's get back together and we'll figure out where we're going to go. And so inevitably, when we get back together, it's not $400 that's available. It's $42, because just the act of tracking where our money goes really typically reveals a lot of opportunities. And that's even the case today as we look at things as they've rolled out over the last year and a half. But knowing where it goes, figuring out where it should go, where should it go? Well, that's really more about you than it is me. I mean, we have some common rules of thumb: X amount on housing, X amount on transportation. But I guess the thing I would focus on is, are you putting the money, deploying it to the places that are important to you? So for example, we have savings accounts. I've got typically running 3 or 4 savings accounts on it. So the one I mentioned earlier, we've got Michaela graduation trip. That's the one we've been saving for a couple of years, and it's going to come to fruition here shortly. But we've got a savings account. It's named Michaela graduation trip, and we put money in it each paycheck. So that's important to us. Retirement, I have a 401k at work. My wife has a 401k at work. We put money towards it. Some TSP, IRA, could be a retirement type funds. But those are the things that are important to us. We're funding them. We used to fund education for the kids' college, but we're, knock on wood, about done with that, and we're gonna have some money left over. So that's exciting. Thanks to my son joining the Army and not using any of the money we'd allocated for him. But that's a whole nother story. So hey, are you putting money towards where it should go relative to your goals? Are you arguing about money? Do you have enough money when it comes to the the more month than money thing? Are your bills eclipsing what's there? So those are kind of red flags that would say, hey, maybe our money's not going where it should. We've got to create that plan, step 3, to get from where it is going to where it isn't. Maybe that could mean cutting back, reallocating, cutting out, that sort of thing. And then just being cognizant that this is a continuous process. So it's not a fire and forget, just like we talked about with the insurance. In the end, you'll be able to spend less than you earn. You'll be able to save consistently, and you won't rack up a bunch of debt. And that's really what we want for all of you. At some point, you're though going to want to use debt, and when that's our credit, and at that point in time, you want to get the best rates. And the curious thing about credit and managing credit is it's really a spider. I mean, it seeps into a lot of different parts of our lives, whether it's in many states how much you pay for insurance. On the military side, it could be security clearances, getting a phone, post-military, or if you're looking for an employment opportunity, it could, how you manage credit can impact an employer's perspective of you. So understanding the landscape is critical. And here, hopefully you've seen this pie chart. Hopefully this isn't something new in terms of knowledge, but you look at the right hand side there. What goes into the typical credit score? You pay on time every time. Don't owe a lot. Don't ask for a lot of credit. Use different types of credit. And then the one you really can't control, other than if you're not in the game, is just to have a long credit history. So in this context, when we look at the pandemic, what's happened, there may be some of you out there that have taken advantage of provisions in the law that were designed to lessen the impact of the pandemic. And so that may have meant you could make arrangements with a creditor, and those arrangements would not be reported negatively on your credit report. So going to annualcreditreport.com, looking at your credit report and making sure everything's reported accurately, hey, great time to do that. It also could have been an opportunity to pay down debts. I missed one of my key points on the last slide, but it was just this idea that there's been a lot of windfalls for many families out there. So you have multiple stimulus, recovery, rebate, whatever you want to call them, checks that have come. What have you done with those? Have you put them in savings? I mean, we've seen a savings rate that at one point during the pandemic was upwards of 30%, which typically it runs around 6%. So people are kind of pulling things in, being protective, and a lot of that money that came in the form of stimulus payments was actually just saved, invested, or used to pay down debt. But if you've got that money still sitting on the sideline, hey, great time to take a look at what you have out there in terms of debts, and maybe allocate some of that money towards it, because that's the one piece of your credit score that you can have an immediate impact by eliminating debt. It can immediately bump up your score. Sorry, I've got 4 dogs in my house right now. My in-laws are staying with us, and they have their dog here as well as my 3. So the other thing that we've really seen on this front is just an increase in fraud. So a lot of pandemic type fraud things going on out there. which to me, this was an opportunity to highlight, hey, there's a couple things that you can do as military families. One could be an active duty alert, which provides a limited amount of protection, because anybody who's going to lend you credit or is going to offer you a line of credit is going to have to verify your identity. A stronger way to go might be a credit freeze. So if you freeze your credit, nobody can access your credit report. So that's going to pretty well protect you in terms of that type of fraud. The upside of that is it's going to provide a lot of protection. The downside is if you want to go buy a car, you want to get a credit card, you're going to have unfreeze it. You have to freeze and unfreeze. It used to be that would cost you money to do that. That's not the case anymore. So a law a couple of years ago eliminated the ability for the credit reporting agencies to charge you for that. So you can freeze and unfreeze. It's fairly easy. That's something that we do at our house, and takes a quick visit on the computer. Or they have some 800 numbers that are somewhat work less efficiently, I would say, than the computer. But bottom line is, hey, where do you stand relative to protecting your credit, and what are the steps you're taking, and what are a couple that are available? All right, let's shift gears a little bit to the idea of I think that needs a reset more often than not for just about all of us. But it's the idea of saving and investing. And so we've got a phrase here at USAA that really developed several years ago when we were doing some events at Air Force installations. But it's this idea of start early, start small, stay committed. And start early, of course, when is early? I mean, ideally it was 30 years ago. But for me, had I really started early and hard, I probably wouldn't be here right now. I'd already be out on the golf course. But the second best time to start, if you didn't start years ago, is today. And so as you reset your own financial situation, now is a great time to look at starting, because, hey, time is a powerful ally. And if you haven't enlisted it, you're better off doing it today than doing it, 5 years or 10 years from now. And oftentimes we can find all the reasons that we don't or can't save, can invest. But my call to action would be, hey, find a reason you can. And that centers back around having a visualization of what it is that you want to achieve, what you want to do, what choices and flexibility do you want to have. So start early, start small. I say small just because, hey, we want something that's sustainable. If you start with a big number, let's say you go back and say we're going to put 20% in the TSP, and we're going to start putting 6,000 each in IRAs, and you get into it 2 months and you can't pay your bills, and you just say, throw up your arms and say, I'm done, out. Then we haven't really done anything that we can build on and that will be successful. So that's the idea behind start small. Just do something that's sustainable and that can be built upon, and stay committed. Hey, have a framework for what you're doing. You're going to do periodic reviews. In a second, we'll talk a little bit about how you manage investments during the pandemic, but you're going to have a check-in, a glide path for what you're trying to accomplish, and periodically set yourself up for success by doing things like automatic transfers, payroll allotments to things like the TS, or no, it's not payroll deductions to fund the TSP, or a 401k if you've got a civilian employer. So stay committed. All right. The first thing we always talk about, and whenever we have a crisis, it comes up as something that we should do better at. And it's this idea of an emergency fund. With respect to the pandemic, maybe you had an emergency fund and you used it. I think that's an important thing to restock as you look at what you're going to do with stimulus payments or money that's sitting on the sideline. Is maybe you don't do anything with it. Maybe it just becomes the baseline for your emergency fund. A lot of times military families are like, well, hey, we've got that one solid paycheck. We made it all the way through this pandemic and it really did impact us substantially. Do we really need an emergency fund? And my answer to that would be, yeah, you probably do, because there's going to be something that comes up where it's a key player. And maybe one of those things is transition out of the military. I mean, that's the only certainty of wearing a uniform. At some point in time, you'll take that uniform off. And at that point, hey, having an emergency/transition fund could be the key thing that really helps you bridge the gap as you move to civilian life, and makes certain that you have the flexibility to take advantage of the right options relocate, whatever it might be. So emergency fund, the one pushback I get on this oftentimes, especially in an environment today, like we're really low interest rate environment, is that, hey, you make no money there, but my thing is, hey, I'm okay with that trade-off. I want all the money there when I need it, and don't particularly care about having too much money sitting in a very low interest bearing account. But over time, that will change. Transition, great example I was using before. Hey, transition goes smoothly. You've got 12 months of expenses sitting in cash. Maybe at that point in time, you say, you know what, don't need that anymore. I could drop that down to 3 months and redeploy this money elsewhere to more longer term type investments as opposed to savings. So take a look at where you stand relative to your emergency fund as we again get to the other side of this pandemic. This is one thing that hasn't changed. Is just the burden of providing for our retirement, whatever that looks like, it is on us. And so I talk about pensions. When I graduated from West Point back in the 80s, flash forward to now, and 80% of the civilian corporations that had pensions no longer have them. So pensions, you get a monthly check like in the military for the rest of your life. That's gone away and been replaced by things like 401ks and things where you need to really own retirement. Social Security, I say it's a question mark. I don't think it's a question mark of whether or not it'll be there, but it's a question mark of maybe when you'll be able to access it, how much, will there be needs-based testing relative to Social Security? And we've already seen that with Medicare. So depending on how much money you make, that's going to impact how much you pay for your Medicare benefits. So is something like that in the cards for Social Security? I don't know. I don't have a crystal ball. But my point is, if this is a cornerstone of your retirement plan, not too excited about that. Ultimately, you own it. And what might have happened over the last year and a half? I mean, last year there were some pretty cool provisions to help people weather the storm. The CARES Act provided for penalty-free withdrawals for regardless of what age you were. Could have taken it from the TSP IRAs, and maybe that was the difference between it being a painful financial experience for you and not. So that's great. On the other hand, okay, what has that done now to you as you look forward in terms of where you stand relative to your glide path to do the things that you want to do? So maybe when you look at this, it should impact how you're investing, it should impact where you're investing or how much you're investing. So you should own it, and it may very well have been impacted by what's happened over the last 15 months. One thing that has certainly changed recently is hey, we've gone from a Republican administration to a Democrat administration, and there's talk of tax increases and that sort of thing. Again, no crystal ball here, but could be something that you have to be cognizant of and implement into your own plan. So you have two at the top there, I guess Uncle Sam incented type of plans, whether it's a TSP or IRA. You've got traditional plans that allow you to reduce your taxes today. You've got Roth plans that allow you to create a tax-free stream of income down the road. What makes more sense? I don't know, but it could change over time, and it could change based on what we see happening in the current environment. So when it comes to Roth, if you think you're going to pay more taxes in the future, then Roth makes more sense. If you think you're paying more taxes now than you will when you use the money, then traditional makes more sense. And maybe the right answer is to hedge, go right down the middle and use a little bit of both. At my house, we used to do mostly Roth. And then my wife went back to school, became a nurse practitioner. She was a nurse at the time. And basically her income doubled. And all of a sudden, my primary concern was reducing the pain of taxes today. So we shifted mostly to traditional. So we flip-flopped just because it made more sense at that time. And then obviously those accounts have strings attached to them generally in terms of when you can access to get the full tax benefits. Not all your goals are going to be retirement oriented. So maybe you save and invest outside. So having your plan for this, what we call income tax diversification, is important. And again, could change based on what's going on in the environment around you. Two key engines of retirement savings, 401k / thrift savings plan. Again, that's a payroll, that's an employer plan, payroll deduction, allows you to save a lot more. Cool thing about the TSP is you don't have any limitations on being able to contribute to the Roth side of the TSP. If your spouse is deployed and you want to save for retirement, the Roth TSP, great way to do it. Throw money that you didn't pay tax into a tax-free account that's going to grow for the next 30 years, and then pull it out, both what you put in and all those earnings over the decades, all out tax-free. That's a unprecedented opportunity. Kind of like we've had unprecedented year over the last year and a half. IRA, same thing. Great way to save. One of the questions that came a lot out of one of the sessions we did was just this idea of, hey, I'm a non-working spouse, or I don't work outside the home. I want to do something for retirement. What do I do? Well, you can probably do what's called a spousal IRA. So you can do an IRA, make an IRA contribution based on your spouse's income, if that's the situation you're in, and have a retirement account in your name, despite not having a opportunity to contribute to a 401k or something. If you're covered by the blended retirement system, the military's relatively new retirement system, which will provide you up to 5% match. So the idea here is don't ever leave free money on the table. And with BRS, if you contribute 5%, you're able to get the 5% from your service. So that's something you don't want to miss out on. So again, looking at where you stood relative to all of that with retirement, how has the pandemic impacted you? What do you need to do to get back on track, or to stay on track, or to really continue to make more headway? This next one is I think one of the things the pandemic did, and you got to almost go back a year. So go back to the end of March last year and just ask yourself, okay, how were we doing when the market went from a bull market to a bear market quicker than it had ever gone? It dropped like a rock when the pandemic really emerged on the scene, and so for a lot of people that was a real test. I had a good buddy of mine from high school who had called me, and I kind of, as a friend, helped him figure out what he wanted to do maybe a year prior to that, and so I went back up there last summer, and I'm like, hey, this is pretty good, huh? You bounced back. That portfolio you built was really solid. And his point to me at that point, or what he said to me, was he'd bailed out at the end of March. So he didn't get any of the bounce back that's continued, to today, because, and this is probably as much my fault as his, is he wasn't in the right place. So he didn't know himself in terms of how he was going to react when things went haywire. And so that's an opportunity to look back at how you reacted to all that, and make adjustments as necessary in terms of where we're at right now at a good time. But again, if you look at it, making your automatic, paying yourself first, making your investments automatic, ensuring that where you're putting your money is aligned. So the type of things you're choosing for investments or savings are aligned with what you're doing it for. So if I'm saving for next year's vacation, guess what? It's in a savings account. If I'm saving for retirement 30 or 40 years from now, I can have the opportunity to roll a whole bunch of stuff into it. And then controlling what you can control. So we talked about tax diversification. Well, you have a little bit of control over that in terms of the investments you choose, where you choose to invest. Expenses, you can control that in terms of the investment selections you take. So all these are things that you can control, and there's something beautiful about being able to control something as we go through this, because ultimately the pandemic is was a reminder that there's a lot that is out of our control. I don't know what that is. All right, sorry about that. But ultimately, what we do want to do is ensure that we leverage time. I was talking about that earlier. And so can you guys hear that? That's pretty good. I don't know how I shut that off. Holy cow. It's probably a telemarketer. It's probably fraud. All right. So but the bottom line, this is just a great illustration, I think, of the power of time. And so I want to spend a moment to here you have two different scenarios. One where somebody started at age 22, or 32 on the left. On the right, they started at age 22. They only invested 60,000 more when they started earlier, but look at the difference over time. And so that's the whole story about the power of time and really putting it on your side. And so that the same type of an equation will play out if you're at 26 now and you're looking at 26 versus 36, or 30 versus 40. So start now. All right, so there's our core advice again. Pretty quick and dirty, but the idea here is, hey, take a look at your situation, figure out where you need to go now. And I know there's a lot on your plate, so this is a big ask. But take a look at what you can do and do it. Too often, at least in my world, finances fall to the bottom of the line because there's a lot going on in your lives. So this is kind of the call to action to do that. And Jerry Detweiler is a lady, a credit guru I used to do some events with, but she always said at the end of her presentations, hey, just because you can't do everything doesn't mean you can't do something. So hopefully somewhere in this little quick overview that we provided today, there's an opportunity for you to make a difference in your own personal finances. All right, how's that? Bam.
Bam, that was great. Thank you. So we have about 5 minutes for questions and answers. So I don't know if you had fielded any via chat, David, but open to the attendees. If you have any questions, I think JJ would be happy to answer those.
Yeah, for sure. See, now I can make my chat come up, I think. All right, you guys are gonna let me off easy. It's Friday afternoon.
Yes.
And you're gonna just let me head out the door. Too nice, too nice. Well, again, thanks, Philip, for having us. Thanks for again for all of you for all you do, and happy Military Spouse Appreciation Day. I know here at USAA you are definitely appreciated, and we tip our hats to you for all you do and the sacrifices you make. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much, and we'll make this available in our. So this is the beauty of this platform. We'll be able to put this in our inventory. And if anyone is interested in this presentation, they can view it at a later time. So thank you so much, JJ. Thank you, David, for
Thanks, Phil. Appreciate
this
it.
Military Spouse Symposium. So the next session in the breakout sessions is not until 2:10. So thank you, everyone.
Perfect. All right. Have a great day. Great weekend. Take care.
Everyone.
Thank you.